Let's move to Togo, where the opposition has denounced a proposed new constitution as a power grab. Now intended to extend the reign of President Faure Gnassingbé, the reforms would see the West African nation move from a presidential to a parliamentary system. But the opposition says that they are rules to keep Mr. Gnassingbé already in his fourth term in power. Now joining me on the program is David Matsanga, African Affairs Analyst. Thank you for joining me, David. Thank you for joining, David.
Thank you very much.
All right, it's great to be here. Now, I just want, to start off the conversation, your immediate reaction to, number one, the idea of the, what I call it, constitutional change, and also what the opposition is saying right now.
First of all, it is sad that Africa, most of the African countries and most of the heads of state of Africa want to go the way Togo is going. The change of constitutions, the shrinkage of constitutionalism in Africa, that when a president reaches a point where is about to do his term, 2 terms, he wants to go home. He wants to extend. What is the disease? Where is the sickness coming from? Because we have seen it in Guinea-Conakry, where it created a problem and the Conde was removed. We have seen it in Mali. We have seen it in several places in Africa where constitutions have been extended and third term being looked for. Why do you look for third term, which you have not finished in 2 terms? Why do you want to extend the constitution? That is where we have a problem, and that is why Africa is going back to the 1970s, 80s military coups.
Now, the president's supporters are actually saying that the changes would actually reduce the powers of the head of state by transforming the presidency into a ceremonial role. However, the opposition is saying that the reforms would allow him remain in power as president of the state till 2031 and then be appointed into a new position, which is president of the Council of Ministers, which in effect is, give or take, a prime minister's position. What's your take on this?
First of all, one of the problems, before I come to that answer, one of the problems of Africa is cut and paste. Is a cut and paste situation. We just borrowed the United States Constitution without looking at ourselves. What does the African Constitution, the input of African Constitution, what does it say? What does it put in? What does it bring for Africa? Is it viable for Africa? If you look at most of this question of 50 plus 1, 50 plus 1 is the most dangerous element in the economy. People sit somewhere and decide how tall, how short, how big you are, how deep your pocket is, and they give you the presidency. Why we go to simple majority? Why do we go to some where you select a president and you select MPs and the MPs sit down, the largest exit the Matsanga is calling Matsanga's theory on Africa. 50 plus 1. Remove the Supreme Court. When you have called 94 million voters on the streets of Benin, Abia, and they have come, why do you ask 50 plus 1? Why then? Another thing is Supreme Court issues. So what he's trying to avoid is this route of Supreme Court in Tanzania to politics. And when we are teaching our listeners and the viewers across Africa,
all right,
can elect your MPs. Elect your MPs, but you cannot talk about presidency. There is something wrong. People are battling to change constitutions.
All right, now let's look. David, it appears like we're losing you in terms of connection. Maybe, if possible, possibly you can do without the headset because it seems that we're unable to really hear you. And now my question is, my next question would be around, of course, the issue of what exactly the rule of law, portends right now in Togo. Do you think that the judiciary has the willpower enough to maybe, turn down or rescind on this particular move by the president?
Very well, if it is not biased, but the judiciary in Togo is still going to have. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
The judiciary could be biased. The same judiciary. I think your question was...
Yes, my question was around the judiciary.
In Togo's constitution, the Chief Justice of the court is appointed chosen by the president. So what is he going to rule, which is different from what has been got? There is a problem here. And that problem is, why should we go and vote? Why should people... Togolese president was doing is a good thing for Africa. In fact, if you change and go for simple majority, you get 70%, the second person gets 69%. The men in Dakar, in Accra, and I told them, go for the vote first round. Don't accept to go back for second round, where you might be They will come up and say, yes, go ahead and change. So it is something which is very touching and very disturbing Africa today with military coups. And if I were any leader in West Africa, I wouldn't like to touch, to tamper, or alter anything as far as the elections are concerned. Because most of your ECOWAS members, now most of them, you have several military guys around. These people, let's come back and reason, sit on table, dialogue, decide, and make a better way for Togo.
All right, David, we would go on a quick break. When we return, of course, we will pick up on the conversation. Stay with us. You're still watching the conversation on News Central Television, and we're talking about, of course, the constitutional amendment in Togo that has generated reactions within the state and even outside the country. Joining me on the program, or with me still on the program, is David Matsanga, African Affairs Analyst. Thank you for hanging on, David.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm sorry for... Are you hearing me now?
Yes, it's way better now. Yes. Now, you talked in your of course, subsequent analysis, you talked about the issue of the military. You made reference to that as to what we are seeing right now in some African states. I would like you to shed more light on that, particularly what role do you think the ECOWAS can play in this situation?
First of all, it is sad that if we don't clean our politics, we shall always invite the younger men from the barracks to come and take over power, knock on our doors. What the Togolese government and the president is doing is simply that, everything in West Africa is fragile, and you can't start playing with the constitution, amendments, change of term limits, change of governance, style of governance. If he wanted a Westminster style of governance, he would have done it. He has been having a presidential style of governance. Now he sees that his 2 terms are over. He changes to a Westminster style where you can have a president ceremonial, but a prime minister working very effectively. So for me, one of the things that kills Africa is constitutionalism. Our constitutions were cut and pasted. Across Africa, all these constitutions are cut and pasted. Look at all of them, Nigeria, everywhere, Uganda, Kenya, all these constitutions are cut and pasted. People have just cut and pasted the United States Constitution. Our societies in Africa have not reached that level. We have not reached a level of knowing exactly that once you vote, you go back home. The only 4 countries in Africa where I have not seen blood flowing on the streets of those countries: South Africa, Tanzania, Ghana, and Liberia. Those are the countries that have witnessed elections that have gone peacefully. But all countries, if you look at all countries that have 50+1, which the president of Togo wants to turn to, all of them have a quarrel, including your own place. You saw how people went to Supreme Court. Why do you go to Supreme Court when you have subjected people, 94 million of your people, to vote? Why then do you take the matter to Supreme Court for 7 judges to decide? That is my query. And that's why you have seen me. I've written a very powerful paper which Africans should pick a leaf from. The 50+1 is for good situations where people are honest. But most of election officials in Africa, my brother, are not honest.
All right. Now, what do you think ECOWAS as an institution can do about this? Because this is not the first time conversations like this have come up, where there have been talks that regional bodies like the ECOWAS, the AU, and the likes, should not just pay lip service, but should maybe, create some sort of scorecard mechanism that ensures that government, particularly member states, keep to the rule of law.
This organization like ECOWAS are funded by foreigners. We're in trouble, my brother. And let me speak this openly and frankly. ECOWAS, AU, these are organizations that are in HDU, High Dependence Unit in Africa. They depend on France to give them money to run organizations. African Union you are talking about is already captured. It does not have even a score method of how we can relate it to democracy, how we can change Africa through education. We need a Secretary General, AU chairperson, who can bring programs that can teach democracy, voting, elections in Africa. We don't have. Forget about what you talk about, ECOWAS, East African Community, SADC. How many of these countries have their own money? None. ECOWAS depends on some funding from France. So France will come and say, we want you to do this. If you don't do this, we won't give you this. We won't do that. Time has come, as you rightly put. What can we do? What can ECOWAS do to make sure that it educates some of the leaders that are in power today? Another point that worries every African is this: the way we treat our former leaders, the way we treat the leaders in power when they have left power. One of my disagreements with the opposition in Uganda, for example, is the way they are pointing at President Museveni to say, when you get out of power, you will see. When you get out of power, you will see. We are coming for you. Such a leader cannot get out of power. If you are warning him that is getting out of power, he will be arrested, he will be dumped into a jail, like the way they did to Mubarak, like the way they have done to several African leaders being brought on trial. African governments must learn, African oppositions must learn to use what we call redemption strategy.
Okay.
A redemption strategy where you forgive. If Germany was talking about Holocaust every day, Nazi every day, Germany will not be giving us money today. But 70 years or so past, Germany has developed because it forgot what Hitler did and started improving its economy, infrastructure. Most of us in Africa also creating security. That's why these presidents are going to the extent of extending constitutions, cutting their constitutions and changing them so that they can stay in power. Because if you have some cases where you have committed corruption, you have been giving jobs.
All right, David, I'm sorry we are pressed for time. We need to go. But thank you, as always, for making our time to be on the program today. Once again, we appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We are sorry about the hiccup of a network. It is your West African network, not mine. In my country, I would have had the best network. Thank you very much.
I'm sure it only gets better with time. But once again, thank you. Well, that's a wrap on today's episode. And of course, don't forget, in case you missed out, you can actually catch up on our YouTube page. The name still remains News Central Television. My name is Dapo Adegboye. Bye for now.